Okay, today we're going to be going over Salesforce Flow's decision element. So, if you're new to this, awesome. If you want to understand more, awesome. We have a use case we're going to go over. I'll break down the criteria, the design, all that good stuff. But before we start, as a good reminder, this video will have an associated blog post on my blog site. So if you're more the person that just wants to look at the documentation of it, feel free to jump over here and you should be able to find that. Also has a bunch of other things that I've posted, right? Anything about Salesforce, business applications. We also have a podcast. So feel free to check out the comments below. I'll have this link here for you and you can jump right over there. So if that's you, feel free to exit now and just check out the documentation. Okay, so we have a use case and we're going to be building a flow. And what we want that flow to do is to update the lead description. So we have our business requirement from our VP. VP of sales said that he wants the lead description to be updated with the appropriate notes depending on a field on the lead called the behavior rating. So what is the behavior rating? I think it's good to understand what that is first before we actually build it, right? So we have a field here called Pixar characters. And depending on who is chosen here, so if we select Buzz, this behavior rating is actually changed to something else. So this behavior rating is just a formula. It's looking at this field, and depending on what value is in this field here, it changes the value here. So what we want to do is we want to trigger this flow to run when this behavior ratings is changed. And then update, obviously, down here, our lead description with the appropriate notes. So looking back at that criteria, if the behavior rating field is evil, we want to update it with this. If it is good, we want to update it with this. If it's meh, we want to update it with this. And what we've chosen for our flow design here is an auto launch flow. So an auto launch flow, if you're not familiar with that, it's exactly what it sounds like. Auto launch in the sense that another process automation is actually going to start that flow for us. So in our case, we have a process builder that when that behavior rating, as we see here, is changed, so if that's true, then kick off this flow. So that's how this is going to work. If you don't know a ton about these variables, I'll swoop back over to talk about those, but if you do know about them, we're just shipping in our record ID and our behavior rating into the flow, so we have that. Okay, cool. So we've gone over the criteria. We understand what we're doing. We have our plan on a piece of paper, which is always smart to do. So we have everything that we need to do. So now we can actually jump into the flow and build it out. So the first thing we want to do is understand what this flow needs to do when it starts. And the very first thing we need it to do is we need it to make a decision, because we can't just go straight to an update. If I were to just update this, it wouldn't know what notes to put in there, right? Like I would put in the same notes every single time, because in this specific element, the update element, I don't have anything here to say, if it's this or that or this, if the behavior rating equals this, then do this. That's what our decision element does. So the very first thing we want it to do is actually go to the decision element. Now let's look inside the decision element. What is this actually doing? How does it work? The decision element, just think of it as a filter. This filter is looking at the behavior rating, and depending on that rating and what it equals, we will then be able to route it with different paths. So when I make that path over to the update record, like you saw, I can choose, okay, depending on what one this was, we want it to send it there. So in our case, for the evil update, we want it to equal evil, right? And it will go over to this update records and update it with those appropriate notes that we have. So that's how that works. That's more or less what this decision element is doing. So let's take a deeper look at that now that you understand that this works just like a filter. And let's figure out what's going on and how you set it up. Over here, you have your outcome order, right? And your outcome order are the decisions you want to make. So if I wanted to create a new decision, that was for our unknown one, even though that's not part of our criteria, if I did, I could say, come over here, and what we want to do is we want to look at our behavior rating, which is that variable that I showed you in the process builder that is being kicked off. So grab the value that's inside this variable, and if it equals unknown, then we want it to have another path to go and update it if it's unknown, right? So it's pretty straightforward, honestly, how you set it up. Like, there's not a lot to it. You can change this to say any condition is met, all conditions are met. You can even do custom logic if there's several things that you want to look at. So if you're familiar with a workflow rule or a process builder and logic, it's the exact same thing that you do inside this decision element. So pretty straightforward. And in our use case, there's only one thing we're checking, right? We're just checking the name of the behavior rating. So we're just going to keep ours as all conditions met. And we built these out already. So we have our evil one, that creates a path. We have our good one, that creates a path. And we have our meh one, that creates a path, right? The default outcome will always be here. You can rename it to just whatever you want. So if you wanted to say no, you could rename it to that. But the default element, or sorry, outcome, it's always there right off the bat. So in this case, I didn't do it this way, but I could have. I could have just created a path for evil and a path for good and left meh out of it and just use this default outcome. And then let's say if this was the meh, I could actually say use default outcome, because if it's not good and it's not evil, then I know it's meh. So just go ahead and use that default outcome. So that one's always going to be there. And that's the way that you can use it, is if it doesn't meet any of the other paths that you created, just use the default outcome. All right, so we have our decision element. It's built out. We have our paths here. We have the values in here of what they're going to equal. So we're done with that. So now let's take a look at our update records. Now, I know this video is not specifically on update records, but to just review it with you real fast so you know what's going on, we're going to name it evil update because it's going to be updating the lead description with the evil notes. So that's what makes sense to me. I'm going to name it evil update. And where it's going to be updating something is on the lead object. How we know which lead to update is based upon some type of condition. Where we want it to go is grab that record ID that was passed in from the process builder and find the actual lead ID, right? If the record ID that was passed in equals the lead ID, that's how we know this is the right one to update. And then once we're there, we want to grab this description field, right? And I'll just type it out so you can see what I'm doing. You're grabbing the description field on the lead. And here, since it's just text, we just can paste it in here actually and say, update it with this value. And that's it. So this one's also really straightforward in this use case. So let's go ahead and route this one with the evil. And then let's create two more of these. So let's grab a update element and let's call this one good update. And let's build this out. So we want to do specify conditions to identify records and set fields individually. That will then allow me to grab this lead object, and then I can do that condition that I just showed you. So lead ID equals record ID, which is our variable. From there, we want to update the description with, back over here, right? I'm going to update it with this note. Great. Paste that in there. Done. Now we have this element, and we can route the good to it. And let's create one more. And this one will be the meh update. Specify conditions. Grab the lead. Conditions are met. We want to grab the lead ID. And then here we want to grab the record ID. And we want to grab the description to update. Let's go back over here and grab what those notes are and paste that in there. Boom. Okay, and meh. So now we have all of these. You could obviously make this look, nicer, however you wanted it to, just so it's not all over the page. Okay, great. So we have this update, right? We know what we're doing. They're all going somewhere. So let's go ahead and save this as our decision element, save, and activate it. Great, now it's activated. And we already have our process builder set up for this. It's already working the way it needs to. We're looking at that lead behavior once again. If it's changed, and that's true, call on this flow, send in the record ID and the behavior into these two variables that we have, and then kick off the flow. So this is working. So we should be able to refresh our page. We've activated both of them. And let's see if this works. So if I change it to Zerg, boom, it updated it. So we have our description here, right? Updated it to the evil one. Now, if we were to change this again, let's check all three of them just to make sure this is working. Let's move it to Slink. Great, that updated it with the meh one that we have. So that one worked as well. And let's also check the good one to make sure that that works as well. Let's change it to Buzz. Okay, great, and it did. So that is working, and that's like a basic way that you can use the decision element.